Let's begin now looking at the modification of this one to actually create a vertical relationship, right? So instead of just looking at it as a point map in 2 dimensions now, we are going to subdivide the surface and extrude each of those cells based on their relationship to the attractor point. Okay, so now we're starting to work in 3D. Okay, so we're translating this relationship into the 3rd dimension now. Yeah, well, I just answered it. So, all right, so we don't need the mesh UV right now, but Yes, I am. Thank you for reminding me. It is recording. So we don't need the mesh UV right now, but we primarily do need everything else. Yes.
Do we need to make a copy of
You don't have to, but you probably should. That's best practice. So, good thought. Copy and paste it down. Make notes about the one before it. Okay, so mesh UV you don't need, but primarily everything else we will. And here's what we are going to do. I'm going to turn that mesh color off because I don't need that one. So this is our primary subdivided surface, and then we have our centroids. But what we are going to do here is take those subdivided surfaces. I'll turn it back on so you can see what I'm working with. The subdivided surfaces, I'm going to take each of those cells and extrude them in the z-axis based on their distance from the attractor point. And so to do that, I can grab each individual surface, or these are 100 surfaces. I might not even need to deconstruct, but I think I will. So I'm going to go to Analysis and drop in my deconstruct VREP. And I plug that in. And I'm going to use these faces, but I can flatten them. And here's essentially all we have to do, right? So you're familiar now with moving in the z-axis, right? So moving is very simple. But for us, we're going to extrude each of these new surfaces, which is essentially the same thing as a move, except it makes the differential a solid. Or the difference, I should say. So when I go to, is it under transform, I think? Affine? No. Surface. Freeform. Extrude. There it is. So it's under surface and freeform and extrude. And take a look at what it's asking you for. It's asking you for the base curve or surface, and it takes the form of geometry. See how it's got the little swirl? And then it'll ask you for a direction. So there's that little arrow again, right? It's a vector parameter. So we need to give it a numerical value and a unit value, or like a unit direction, orientation. So for us, the surfaces we're going to extrude are the faces. And we're going to extrude it in the z direction. So that's under vector, vector, unit z. And to get us started, I'm going to plug it into this d value, so the distance between your cloud of points and the reference points. So now let's go back into 3 dimensions, our perspective view, and take a look at it.
How did it know like how to make what extrude higher and stuff?
Same thing. We have exactly the same number of inputs going in as we have numbers of magnitude.
Oh,
So we have 100 faces that are being tested against their distance from 100 points to our three, closest points, or each of their respective closest point. And so that creates 100 different magnitude values.
so that's how you get 100 skyscrapers in one.
Sure. Yes, 100 skyscrapers.
Yeah, let's go back.
Okay, so that's kind of the basics of it. But if you want to combine that into something that actually reads visually, it's very, very simple. All you do is just convert it to a mesh and then plug it into this mesh color, right? So you would actually have to borrow the same domain properties and set up whatever type of color rendering you want. But essentially we just do under mesh, we go to mesh brep, I believe. Yeah, mesh brep. So under mesh utility, it's called mesh brep. Yes, mechanical utility. And it's going to ask you again for some very similar things. It asks you for the brep that you're creating a mesh off of, and well, settings we don't have to worry too much about, but that essentially is about how you're triangulating it. So, but we don't need to modify that, and we probably won't get to modifying meshes very much in this class. So then we plug the mesh into mesh colors. Right now it doesn't quite look right, so you have to do something to it, and it's called graft. And graft, or is it? Yeah, it is graft. So when you graft the mesh and the colors, then your attractor points will actually color the entire unit rather than each unit being colorized as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing as the other one, just in 3D. Right?
Yeah. So the grafting part is important to understand, though, because before it's grafted, it's actually colorizing each one individually as a unit. And then when you graft it, it'll give each volume its own singular color. Okay? Are there any questions on that? So that one was a very simple modification, a pretty short video. I am going to stop this here, make sure you're good with that. And I actually do have one smaller one here for you guys to get before we move into the point mapping thing.